rolling. Good afternoon. I'm Michael T. Wiggins Bay, Chief Financial Officer of Propaganda Entertainment, War Powers Publishing, and our Upper Room Studios. Today, I will be introducing everyone to someone who I have known for a long time.
All your life.
Yes, all my life. This brother is the current Republican candidate for the election of Baltimore City Sheriff here in Baltimore, Maryland. And we're just going to take a few minutes today to get to know the brother, maybe ask him a few questions, and give him a chance to introduce himself, his campaign, why he's running, and his platform and issues that he's running on. So I hope everyone enjoys it, and please bear with us. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Could you, for the people, could you tell them your name?
My name is David Anthony Wiggins, and I'm a candidate in the 2010 gubernatorial election for the office of sheriff in Baltimore City.
Let me be the first to say congratulations.
I'm running as a Republican.
He says it a lot better than I do.
What's that? Gubernatorial?
Yes, gubernatorial. Could just for a second I want you to explain to people why you're running for this office in Baltimore City.
Well, the foremost reason why I'm running is to protect the rights of the people. I'm looking at you. I'm talking to you. You asked me the question.
Okay.
I don't have to look at the camera. But to look at the camera and to say to you and those who may view this that the chief complaint that I hear of the people is that their rights are not respected and that there is no public official accountability. People feel as though government is non-responsive and dictatorial. I mean, they feel as though they don't get a good shake. They don't have any representation. I mean, you look at the Tea Party and all of the protests over taxes, all of the protests over the war. Go back to 2000, all of the protests over Bush, and then you get 9/11, and then the protests just stopped. Remember this groundswell of anti-government protests because government was getting bloated and massive and broad and totalitarian, if you will, because you can't say no to the government. And the people feel as though in Baltimore that the government is unaccountable, corrupt, and non-responsive, and their rights aren't being protected. Now that's a long answer, but the short answer is to enforce the civil and the criminal laws of the state of Maryland and Baltimore City, to be the chief executive law enforcer. And that means to enforce the Maryland Declaration of Rights, which is the law of Maryland, the Maryland Constitution, which is the law of Maryland, which is the law, the annotated code, all of the particular articles of law, you know, like the Corporation and Associations article, the Business Regulation article, you know, the Estates and Trust article, the Real Property articles, you know, not just the criminal law articles, you know, because there are various articles, the insurance articles, you know, there are different articles to the Maryland Annotated Code, and they only seem to enforce the criminal laws against the people. You know, the transportation laws, you know, every time you get a ticket, that comes out of the transportation article, you know. So the people don't understand that the sheriff in the jurisdiction is to enforce all of that. And then you have COMAR, which is also implemented, which is the Code of Maryland. Then you have the Baltimore City ordinances and public general laws that you also have to enforce. Now, I don't know whether the president sheriff, you know, does any of that, because I've been told that it is a ceremonial head. But I look at it from the constitutional standpoint that where there is no justice, there is no peace, and where there is no justice, there is no law. And if you're not enforcing the law equally,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
what do you have when you don't enforce the laws equally?
Anarchy.
Well, this is what they used to call it when I was a little boy. They used to call it Jim Crow.
Ah, okay.
You see, because Jim Crow is really nothing more than when the whites who were in power did not enforce the law equally and apply the law equally to blacks. They had separate but equal.
Right.
But under the law of separate but equal, it was separate and unequal, and actually genocidal.
Right.
Because I mean, you know, we live in a country that's 40 years removed from hanging and barbecuing us openly in public. You know, so I make no, mistake about what the law is. Having served in the military, I understand what the Constitution is.
Right.
I understand what my powers and duties would be under the Constitution and protecting the rights of the citizenry from those in government and others who would abuse their powers and privileges under the Maryland Constitution and the laws that were made thereunder.
Okay. Another question will most likely be, what are some of the issues, because in that answer there were some issues that you presented, but what are some of the issues that you would use upon gaining office? If the people were to elect you as sheriff, what issues would be at the forefront of your administration?
Well, my chief duty, they tell me, would be to protect the courts. And that is where the people actually go to get justice. And it appears that in Baltimore City and Maryland in general, the people don't get justice in the courts. So the courts must be protected from those who would usurp its power and steal the justice from the people.
Right.
And see, and that is why in Maryland the people have a right to the grand jury. You see.
Okay.
So
how do they have a right to the grand? What gives them the right to go to the
there
grand
are
jury?
several cases which outline why the people have a right to go to the grand jury, and then there is this prosecutorial discretion and a remedy. See, if a prosecutor declines, or the state's attorney declines, or a magistrate declines to bring criminal charges against an individual, the person who is complaining, rather than file a writ of mandamus against them to compel them to make them do it, they can go directly to the grand jury. Now that comes out of a case known as Brack v. Wells, which is supported by a case named Blaney v. State. Now Blaney v. State says that the grand jury has inquisitorial powers to investigate any and all matters that come before, no matter where they come from. They can institute investigations on their own. And see, those in the courts who would subvert the rights of the people have used the grand jury as a tool as for criminal indictment, but not for all the things and the purposes that the grand jury was meant. It was meant to be separate from the government, but administered by the court, not overlorded by the court or held from the people by the court.
Okay.
You see, the people have a right to go into room 207 of the Clarence Mitchell Jr. Courthouse and complain.
Located where?
At the Clarence Mitchell, that's 100 North Calvert Street. And they have a right to go there and to complain about, let's say, You were the parents of Gerard Mongo Jr.